Okay, now genes. Okay, now we can look at, now we can get this variation. Now we can look at what happens with this variation. Okay, so when we get gametes that produce things, we got things that are, we've got traits that show up. Okay, certain genes produce certain traits. Right. Obvious traits within humans would be hair color, eye color, blood type. Okay, things like that would be kind of our most obvious ones, the simplest ones. Other things like skin pigmentation and like muscle memory, things like that, all that stuff is very much a co-dominant thing. There's not really a dominant and a recessive for that kind of stuff. There's kind of, well, even blood isn't really dominant and recessive. Like type A blood is dominant to type O blood, and type B blood is dominant to type O blood. And A and B are co-dominant, right, which means you can be type AB. Right? If your mom is type A and your dad is type B, okay, you could be a number of different blood types. You could be AB, you could be A, you could be B, you could be O. Okay? You could be all of those. It all depends on what your parents' genes are, because they might have a gene for O and a gene for B. If they do, they're type B, because B is dominant to O. Same with A. Okay? So for example, for myself, I'm type A negative. My dad is type B, and my mom is type A. Right? But they obviously must not be AA and BB, or I would be AB. So they must both have an O gene on there somewhere. Right? Otherwise, I would have ended up as AB. Weird, huh? Strange. No. Just got to get through it, and you'll do more on in Bio 20 AP when you get there. Okay, so we got to look at the vocabulary related to genetics, and we're going to talk about this guy who happens to be the most important person to do with genetics. Gregor Mendel, who is actually a monk, a Franciscan monk. Okay, he learned all about this dominance and recessiveness stuff from he was in charge of growing food for the monastery that he lived in. So he grew peas and beans and things like that. And peas and beans have very obvious genetic characteristics that you can track. And that's what he did. And he would pollinate different plants on purpose from other plants and make sure that he knew who had pollinated this plant, and then he would trace what kind of genetic material the offspring showed the next year when he planted the next crop. And he recorded all of that, and it's thanks to him that we understand how traits get passed on. All right, so Gregor Mendel was an Augustinian monk, and he did garden peas, garden beans, things like that, to formulate ideas about what he called heritable characters. Okay? Things that you could pass on to your offspring. Okay? We call them genes now, that are passed from one generation to another. Okay? So these are the traits that he looked at within the garden pea. Peas can be round or wrinkled when they're ripe. They can be yellow or green. Flowers can be purple or white. And pods can be inflated or pinched. Okay, pinched means that you can actually, they fold in and are tight around the peas inside. Okay, so like loose pants and tight pants. Okay, kind of an idea. All right, and pods can be green or yellow. Now, which one do you suppose is dominant, green or yellow? Green. How often do you see a yellow pea pod? Right, it's pretty rare. Right. Same with yellow peas. Right, like you almost never see yellow peas. They're all green. Okay, this is a dominant trait. Now. Other things that you looked at were actually on the plants, not the peas themselves. And that would be whether the flowers were axial or terminal. Axial means they grow from any branch of the plant. Terminal means they only grow from the tip. Right? Obviously, this would be a trait we would select for if we were trying to breed plants to produce more food. You get peas from a flower. The more flowers you have, the more peas you get from a plant. So that would be something we would select for. Right? And then long or short stems. Obviously, long would be better because that would produce more flowers and we would get more peas off of it. So yeah, when you plant peas in your garden, they're the result of many years of selectively breeding plants to produce the traits we want. Okay, so what he would look at is what traits showed up as a result of the breedings that he caused to happen within the peas. Okay, what he noticed was that the numbers were never equal. Some traits showed up way more often than others. Okay, why do you suppose that would be? Some things, right, some things are recessive and some things are dominant. Okay, the dominant traits show up more often. But he found he could make all the ones that were recessive, he didn't use that term, but he could use the ones that showed up less often. He could make those show up as long as he always bred those ones together. As soon as he bred something that had recessive traits with something that had dominant traits, the recessive trait disappeared. Okay, in that next generation, the recessive trait would disappear. Right? So he was starting to find this idea of that some genetic things were stronger than others. All right, now the advantage of using peas is also that he can control who fertilizes who. The structure of a pea flower makes it very easy to take a paintbrush and go, I'm taking pollen from plant with green pods that are pinched, and I'm going over here to plant that has green pods that are inflated. Okay, now I know who pollinated that plant. Makes it very, very easy, and that's what he would have done. Okay, with just a little paintbrush, he would have pollinated the plants. You could do the same thing if you were really bored. Okay, you could make sure you pollinated one plant with another. And honestly, people who are like in florists and they're trying to make flowers of certain colors, that's what they have to do. You want to make flowers that are a certain color, you can dye them, which will work, but the dye fades. Okay, or you can actually breed them to have those colors. All right, so here's what one of Mendel's things produced. He had a white flower plant and a purple flower plant, and when he pollinated them together, the next generation was all purple. Okay, all purple. Now, he knew that these were true breeding parents because if he bred this plant with another plant, it was always purple, always purple, always purple. This one with another white plant, it was always white, always white, always white. So he knew that these carried only the purple gene and only the white gene. But when he put them together, purple. Now, when he bred these plants together, the next generation showed 3-to-1 ratio of purple to white. So he still got a white plant in there. Now, what that said to him is that this plant produces 2 capital P's. It has only the purple gene. This plant produces only the white gene, little p, little p. When you breed them together, you get all plants that are big P, little p. They have one gene from mom and one gene from dad, kind of a thing there. Okay? When you breed these plants together, okay, you get this, what we call a Punnett square. Big P, little p. So these two go together, I get big P, and that flower will be purple. This one and this one go together, I get big P, little p, purple. Okay, little p, big P, purple. Little p, white. 3-to-1. Okay, 3-to-1. He found that that held true every time. Okay, it was always 3-to-1. Okay, that mathematical ratio is what led him to this idea that there must be 2 copies of each of these heritable characters, and they get passed on like this, and this one is dominant to the other. Right? So it was an important discovery for him. Okay, so that's the Punnett square that we just did right there. So we skipped over that whole thing. Now, terminology: homozygote, heterozygote. Homo means same. So if you're a homozygote, you got big P, or little p, little p. If you are a heterozygote, you got, there we go. Okay. Okay, dominance, recessiveness, we talked about that already. Good. Okay, now genes. Genes are spots on a chromosome. Okay, we call them spots, but really they're a series of base pairs. You guys remember when you talked about DNA last year, right? A goes with T and C goes with G. Okay, so a gene is a long stretch of A, T, C, G, C, G, A, T, A, T, A, T, A, T, C, G, whatever. Okay, your gene, if it's purple flowers, has a certain combination. Okay, if you're white flowers, it's in a slightly different order. Right, and so that gene, that's where that gene resides. Okay, so there's a gene for everything, and it's located somewhere on your chromosome. You got a gene for blood type, you got a gene for eye color. Okay, all that kind of stuff, and it all depends. If you got one from mom that was the gene for white flowers, and one you got the gene from dad that was the gene for purple flowers, you're going to have purple flowers. Okay, so mechanically it's a length of the DNA that has a certain code, and that's what they look for when they do the southern blot that you see on CSI all the time, okay, that shows the whole person's DNA profile. Okay, that's what they're doing, is they're setting up, they're looking for certain genes that show up on the southern blot, certain sections of your DNA, okay, and if the criminal's DNA matches your DNA, you're the criminal. Okay, so they're looking for that set of combinations. Now, you've probably seen, if you watch CSI at least regularly, that sometimes they'll say, well, this is a familial match. It's not a 100% match, but it's a familial match, which means they probably had somewhere between 25 and 50% match, which means they were, well, probably like son or daughter. Okay, if it's like a 50% match, then it's probably a son or daughter. If it's a 25% match, then it's probably a brother or sister. Okay, so that's how they can tell. They can say, look, if these two people are not related, they're going to have like less than 5% similarities. Okay, but if you're starting to get significant portions, then you know that they're related. Okay, and then you know you've narrowed it down to a certain family or group. Okay, I think we all understand that part. Okay, so the big thing here, guys, is if you are a heterozygote, you show which, recessive or dominant? You show the dominant, unless there's a codominance thing, in which case you show something else, both. Okay, like blood type. All right. So with blood type, just as an argument's sake here, okay, I could figure out what the blood types of all of my ancestors would be. Well, we'll talk about that another day.